Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon. Revelation 12:3.
Once again, an armed attack in the Middle East, but this time it's different.
October 7th was the devil's holiday.
It's very hard to believe what happened, even though I was there and seeing with my own eyes and seeing them laughing and killing and having fun with it.
Because if you don't open the door, they are going to kill you and they are going to kill me, so please open the door.
So who are the Jews? Who are the Palestinians? And whose land is it really? Could the fate of the world, of humanity itself, be somehow tied to this place?
The nation of Israel is a resurrected nation. So what if there was going to be a resurrection of another people, an enemy people of Israel? The Bible speaks about this whole war as a dragon representing the enemy attacking a woman representing Israel.
The civilian deaths on both sides represent victories on the part of the dragon.
Hamas did everything within their ability to maximize the civilian casualty.
We came back to a land that was largely barren and empty, and we brought it back to life, and we're going to keep it.
The devil hates the Jewish people because they represent the existence of God.
Because without that Jewish foundation, there is no Christianity.
If we're approaching the end of time, God will reveal himself more and more dramatically.
Speak back through the stones. The story that they've been telling is that Israel is a colonial project. The problem with that is the city of David. We are an inconvenient truth.
Are you aware of any significant archaeological finding that contradicts the Bible?
No.
God's word stands firm. The dragon will not prevail.
Your message here is become a dragon slayer.
Based on Jonathan Cahn's #1 international bestseller, The Dragon's Prophecy.
Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the program. Would you please give me a finger? Will you share this program? We're going to dive deep into, that technically Dominion voting has gone away. That solves all our problems. Or does it? We're going to dive into that. By the way, today's program is brought to you by the fine folks from Goldco. You know them. They've been with us for a very long time. In fact, gold is biblical. Back to biblical times. It's only when mankind and politics got involved that we moved from gold and silver to, paper fiat money. Now is the time to protect your money with gold and silver. It's that simple, folks. And so I'm asking you to please go to JovanLovesGold.com and request your free gold and silver kit today. It might even benefit you to the tune of $10,000 in free silver. I've got another thing for you. Let's see. Let me find it here on my boom. Hey, immediately following this program, only because there's so much to cover, we're going to be over at my locals. This has a part 2. We're going to go through it even deeper, but you'll get X of it here on my base channel, Rumble. And then you'll get the rest of it over on my locals, simply because there's just so much that we have to cover. So make sure you do that. What we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about shuffling the deck. We're going to analyze the playing cards, because you may have heard that Dominion voting system sold to No Inc., and it becomes Liberty voting. Good, bad, indifferent, solve our problems, risk, whatever the case may be. I'm going to bring you the background that most people never bother to dive into and let you decide. Is this just a shuffling of the deck? Or does it move the needle? That's the question. Does it move the needle? You got about 3 minutes. Share this everywhere and we'll get started.
A man slides the deed to his house across the table. His payment? A single tulip flower. It's the Dutch Golden Age. A new exotic flower from the East arrives, valued purely as a status symbol. But then, something shifts. A strange virus twists its petals, leaving flame-like patterns. The infected blooms are hailed as art, worth more than the flawless ones. Prices explode. Coffee houses become trading floors. Sailors wave paper slips like flags. Merchants scream prices that double by noon. At this point, they are not even buying flowers. They are trading slips of paper for bulbs still in the ground. One bulb for a ship, another for a mansion. Husbands tell wives it's safer than gold. Friends whisper in ears. Everyone knew someone getting rich on petals. And as long as someone paid more tomorrow, everyone was rich today. Until one morning in 1637. The auctioneer raises a prized bulb, drops the price. Silence. Drops it again. Nothing. For the first time in years, there are no buyers. A whisper of doubt spreads through the room. Then the city. Then the nation. Everyone rushes to sell. Nobody's buying. Within days, the most prized petals can't even fetch onions. History's first financial bubble had just burst. And it certainly wouldn't be the last.
True story. But that's why you need to understand history. Imagine trading on the basis of flower petals. Here we go.
Warning. The following program has been rated Gilligaff and is intended for open-minded audiences. If the truth offends you, or if you are allergic to focused intensity, intellectual athleticism, or the occasional F-bomb or even irreverent humor, please switch off now. If your delicate sensibilities need to be worried about or addressed, might we recommend the Underwater Basket Weaving channel to you? Otherwise, sit back, enjoy the wisdom, insight, and wicked sense of humor.
Cut the crap. How many times a day do you want to say that to politicians, the elite, the loony liberals, the fake news media, and the gender-confused, emotional socialist snowflake crowd? Cut the crap is your secret weapon for fighting for our freedoms and our great republic. It all begins with a massive mental enema, freeing you from the toxic news and politically correct views, which constipate your consciousness with stinking thinking. Your host, JovanHuttonPulitzer. He's known for calling out politicians and telling them to cut the crap. You've seen him on virtually every television network and listened to him on Coast to Coast Radio. And now he's here to help you learn to fight for America. Culture, race, and American politics. They all have one thing in common. They all need to cut the crap. Now, here's your host, JovanHuttonPulitzer.
Okay, folks, here we go. We're going to be talking about, did Dominion voting systems go away, or did the dealers' name badges change? What was it? What happened, right? I'm going to ask you a simple question, okay? I hear that maybe Mike Lindell is taking a victory lap. I got rid of the voting machines. Did we get rid of the voting machines, yes or no? Right? It'd be like Obama is now going to be called Salim. Well, there's no Obama anymore, so we won. No, he just calls himself Salim. So did we get rid of the voting machines? Is that what happened? Is that a victory? Yes, no, maybe. Well, if you're a level-headed thinking person, you know it's no, 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 period. Okay. And so they were sold And I want to tell you who. I want to give you the breakdown on everything, because my job is to make you the smartest patriot in the room. If you don't have the information and you don't know the facts, you're probably going to get conned easily. Right? You're probably going to get conned easily. So I'm here to talk about several of these things I need you to understand. First off, I don't know if you heard this story, right? The fellow's name is Colonel Conrad Reynolds. All disclosure, as I gave you this story, all disclosure, I met him in Missouri at a Lindell event, exceptionally briefly. I didn't meet him officially at the event. Somebody introduced him to me briefly in the hotel that everybody was staying at, and that was about it. I've never dialogued with them. He's part of the team with Lindell and others that, hey, don't talk to Jovan, stay away, blah, blah, blah. So I really have no true inside information, but this is something that you should know about. Well, he was actually arrested. Yeah, he was arrested. And the arrest, although it was probably wonky, okay, shows a tremendous amount of crap going on in Arkansas regarding elections. Now, this ended up with several different things going on. And you hear people promoting the hand count roadshow, the hand count this, whatever, it's pioneering, hand marked, hand counted. Well, what has now kind of culminated in all of this, an entire county election commission has been decertified and pushed out. And they have been put on a 14-year probation from, I don't know what you call it, 14-year probation from participating in elections. Okay. Now, this all stems from moving to a hand count. Okay. And what's going on is somehow in the count, and it really is very hard to understand what side, there were 11 votes that didn't get counted. Honestly, I can't figure out, was it 11 votes the machines missed? Was it 11 votes the hand counter missed? I don't know what it is, but Searcy County made a move to go to hand counted paper ballots, and they did it with a bipartisan resolution, right? The legislative body did a 6-2 vote. Now, the powers that be gave the typical bull, it'll cost too much, it'll cost too much, it'll cost too much. They actually, from what I understand, now I've not audited these numbers. A lot of times the conservative reporters are agenda driven. They don't really go on hard facts, whatever the case may be. But the county, we'll just call it the bad guys, it's going to cost too much. Well, it looks like when the primary was done in 2024, where they were able to do this hand count, they ended up doing it for about 18% cheaper than the 2022 primary conducted on the voting machines. They give no numbers for it at all. They give no numbers for it. But whatever happened in this battle, right? There's been a war going on, and my only interest in this is it's about the paper, right? That's about it. About the paper, period. Now, what they did, evidently, the folks in Arkansas, right, somehow basically said, well, we FOIA'd this information and they didn't get it to us, and therefore it was a crime. All of it comes down, it seems to a $100 invoice. Yeah, $100 invoice. And I guess Colonel Reynolds, see, everybody has their own derivative. There's the John Smith plan. There's the Smith-John plan. There's the John Smith Patriot plan. There's the Patriot John Smith. You follow what I'm saying? Everybody forms their own little election committee groups, Fala, Wallas, Dallas, and somehow a $100 invoice wasn't produced. The net result was, and if I've interpreted this wrong, anybody in Arkansas, let me know, because I have just disclosed to you, I don't have contact with anybody regarding the Hand Count Roadshow, Mike Lindell, or whatever, because they've been strictly forbidden to dialogue with me or to come on the program or to talk about these things. But somewhere in the mix, somebody didn't get out a $100 invoice. And what it did is it created an interesting loophole, as I understand it. By the way, anybody in Arkansas following this, let me know if I'm getting this right. And because of that, they were able to get rid of potentially the people that voted for the move to paper anyway. What is the common thread when I give you this story? What is everybody upset about? Is it voting machines? What are all the teeth coming out for? Paper. Now, for Conrad Reynolds, who is tied to both of these things, it's his auditing company. I forget what it is. Election integrity, 3 times squared, best election integrity. I don't know what it is. And long ago, I've decided I don't like the word election integrity, the phrase, because there is no integrity in elections. It's a misnomer, okay? But when you get focused on the paper, something interestingly happens. Now, what you're watching is, and I would think that everybody in the world would be pissed off at Lindell about the lie about the machines, the lie about the PCAPs, but everybody's moving on. Yeah, it was crap. Moving on. Okay, no problem. I love crosses outside church. Reynolds evidently got arrested because he happened to be at a polling site. He was arrested for his behavior, arrested at a polling site, okay, outside Batesville. Now, get ready for this. And the offense was he was talking about votes within 100 feet of a polling place, and he did this at 29 feet. And he was wearing a black shirt that and a lanyard that said official paper ballots. Yeah, I want to state that right. An arrest came not for screwing the elections or anything like that. Not for screwing up the elections, not for, tinkering with the machines. He was too close within the 100 feet wearing a lanyard that said paper ballots, official paper ballots. I think it's exceptionally important you pay attention to this. When you get into the paper, the game changes. Because the system, unlike the cons that were put out to con the American public, to suck all the money out of the room, to put everybody on every show that talked about everything except how you really fix this and where the cheat comes from, they used the loophole to perp walk them. It's moronic, right? It's moronic. Okay. Now you also have to understand, which is one thing I don't understand, is that Sarah Huckabee Sanders and her staff have been really coming down hard as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody watching in Arkansas, where I was born, they just want to make sure the machines stay in. Now, I don't want you to leap to any conclusions that is somebody saying the machines do it. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I want you to understand that. When somebody says you got to use the machines, okay, that is not equivalent to saying the machines do it, the machine controls the vote. See, that's the con. By forcing you to look at the machines and only the machines and having used the machines, they keep you away from the paper. That's what's really afoot. Okay, that's what's really afoot. By the way, repost the stream. Make sure you share, like, and follow right now. But why don't you repost this like others and help people understand how this con works? That's a con. It's very simple. Now, another thing you need to know in this process, okay? And by the way, hand counting does not stop drop boxes. Hand counting does not change the voter rolls. Hand counting does not change instant registering to vote. Hand counting doesn't stop any of that. Hand counting a ballot can't tell whether you're illegal, dead, or anything else. Is that okay? But you see, the complications always arrive with paper. Now, before we get into the rest of it, because I want to give you a history, it's so important to understand how the moves are made in this elections in the United States of America. If somebody says, well, we've got a brand new Help America Vote Act, and we've got a brand new voluntary system guidelines 2.0, we fixed all the breaks. Did that change the election? Did that fix anything? Put it yes or no. They're going to come out with a brand new detail of, hey, we've got a new and improved system. Does that change anything? It doesn't. Now, let me ask you, if they came out with new and improved, inspired by Mike Lindell, voting messiah, everything's fixed and special system. If they came out with a title like that, would that convince you? Would that convince you that our elections have been fixed? That every problem we have in elections have been fixed? Would that convince you? No. How about if Democrats came out with the bill increasing muscular flexibility in toddlers to enrich their lives forever? Sounds nice, right? Wouldn't it sound nice? Until you find out that the way they're stretching this muscles is sphincter muscles because they're raping children. But it sounds like they're doing good for them, right? Until you look under the hood. That is how every bit on both sides of this crap works. The system believes and knows. It's just sad, and knows. If they just sprinkle a little words, that you'll think, yay, it's fixed. It's kind of like going to court for getting sued for defamation. The court finding that you did in fact defame, the court ordering you to pay money, but it's strictly about the defamation of an individual, and you go on a tour, I beat Dominion, I whooped them in court, I brought it all to court. Did that happen? No, it didn't happen. But people don't pay attention to facts. See, the system knows this. And that's why I want to get right down to this issue, which I call shuffling the deck, and you're going to be able to decide on your own. Now, here are all the headlines you're getting, you're receiving, and how this junk works. All over the place, You are hearing Dominion Voting Systems sold to company run by former Republican election official. Now, let me ask you a question. And by the way, I've given you downloads. You probably got 3 or 4 downloads, right? Over on my locals. I've given you the timelines, the names, the numbers, the information, everything. I've given you all the background on every bit of this so you can audit my words. You can do investigations on your own. You can decide what the facts is for yourself. Don't listen to me. Inspect the facts for yourself. Okay. So if Dominion Voting Systems were sold, okay? If Dominion Voting Systems, it doesn't say Dominion Voting Machines, Dominion Equipment Company, it says Dominion Voting Systems. If it was sold, does that fix the problem? Yes or no? Just put it in chat. The fact that it got sold, does that fix anything with elections? We're taking just the one fact. Does it fix anything with elections? No. Now, here's the second part of the question. If it was sold, does it further fix it that it was sold to a former Republican election official? That's the second half of the question. Okay, it got sold. That didn't fix it for you, but it was sold to a former election official. Does that fix it for you? You got a Republican in charge of it, right? Now, what I want to do here is I want to give you the what if, and then I'm going to give you some hard details, but I want to give you the what if. I want you to basically, and this is a critical thinking, linear thinking exercise, okay? First off, Dominion system only came into play when a person lied and said, I infiltrated an Antifa call, and on that call was the executive of Dominion saying, don't worry about Donald Trump, we fucking take care of him. So that's the first thing. Now that lie, which is a total lie and totally disproven, what it did is it created about $8 billion in defamation lawsuits, with Mike Lindell being one of the ones that supposedly lost. It generated for Dominion $1 billion in settlements. It paid them $1 billion in settlements between Fox and everybody else. Right? So on Dominion's side, they made out like a bandit. Could we just call $1 billion cash windfall making out like a bandit? Would you agree with me? And am I stretching to get there? Am I stretching at all to get there? When I just say it in simple terms, I'm not talking about anything else. We're just talking about cash windfall. The fact that Dominion got paid $1 billion through judgments and lawsuits, could we say that was a freaking cash windfall? They didn't make that much money in elections. So can we say, right? Can we say that they made a $1 billion cash windfall? And that they aggressively went out after people like Lindell and all these others. But strangely enough, they didn't really hard press the person that came up with the story. And all the details about the person who came up with the story are locked in secret. Now, I find that weird. Now, do you remember all the memes going out over the internet about dominion? Satan has dominion over earth. Earth is Satan's dominion. Dominion, I'm over you. I'm going to dominate you. Do you remember all of those memes that floated around then? Dominion this, dominion that, all this other stuff. You remember those? Okay. Now let's play a little bit of a word association. Can you say that if somebody has dominion over you and you are locked in that dominion, could we agree that that means, just the use of the word, that means that company or whatever controls you, you have no freedom, you have no liberty, etc.? Could we agree on that? Dominion, right? Dominion. And the opposite of having somebody control you. What's the opposite of having somebody control you? Put it in chat. If somebody wants to, if one time it was all about control, and now they want to convince you that that control is gone, right? What's a word? You got it right. What's the word that could go with that? Well, the word that is the synonym is liberty. So what has happened in this move is dominion, which got a bad rap and $1 billion cash, now is known as liberty voting. We're not gonna have dominion over you anymore. You're gonna have liberty. Now that's kind of interesting, right? That's why names mean things. That's why names matter. But let me ask you another question. If the problem that they sold everybody, that the executive of Dominion Voting, who was part of Antifa, he's a Satanist, he's a bad guy, he's an extreme liberal. If you wanted to have a new owner to convince you that, well, we're not under that type of ownership anymore, and so it gets associated with somebody with it's satanic. He does orgies, he does drugs, he drinks, he's evil, it's dominion. And now you want to go to liberty. What would you do from an executive standpoint? You want an executive that's, well, a synonym, probably a distinct opposite of what you think a Antifa screaming liberal is. Could we agree that would be not only a Republican, but a Republican election official? Just a question. Just a question. Could you see from a synonym basis those two moves? They got that word Republican in. They took you from being over you dominion-wise. Hell, they even worked in Republican, but it's a special Republican. It's an election official, former election official Republican. Now, let me ask you the question, just on the face of it, just on the face of those things, can you see possibly wordplay, keywording, impression selling in process? That's just a question. Can you possibly see that we're doing a little bit of a keywording and a psyop? That's what they're doing to us, right? Okay. I think most common people can see, let's just get past the words. Here it is. They've gone from dominion overs. Now we're going to have liberty. And it wasn't an Antifa Satanist. And now it's a Republican. Yeah, it's a Republican election official. Okay. So now we've kind of set certain things about it. That's what's happened, right? And so now what's happened is Dominion Voting Systems is no more. Now I'm gonna stake my stake in the ground right now. The entire Antifa call, the machines did it. The machines swapped votes. Was 100% psychological warfare and a con. Period. It was designed, it was orchestrated, it was created, it was thought about. They knew the elements they needed. Somebody who went from pillows and a voice, went to a network, went to all this other stuff. My own personal opinion is from the beginning of infiltrating Antifa, and the election official said this, all the way through for how everything was discussed, what they combined it with on TV to make you think, oh, I saw the vote get switched. I saw the vote flipping. I'm telling you, in my professional opinion and my personal opinion, it was all orchestrated to keep you focused on the one thing they needed you to focus on, and that was the machines. Now, I tell you this because machines in our voting systems have been subject to this kind of stuff throughout history. Now, the question is, if you're a buyer, if you're an investor, just a question. If you're a buyer and if you're an investor, so take off your MAGA hat, take off your Democrat or your liberal or your Republican hat. Just say you're an investor, okay? And when you understand a few things, when you understand that it's really only about a handful of pieces of software, but all the machines that are deployed, quote unquote machines, printers, scanners, and all that kind of stuff, they're actually third-party machines, pieces of used equipment. You know, and I know, because I showed you this before, that the actual Dell server piece of equipment that could be used on our Dell thing that runs EMS is a computer that 5 years ago you could buy for $526, that these contracts sell for $36,000 under a lease. So you know how that racket goes. Now, if you were shopping for something, let's analyze why anyone would buy, Dominion Voting Systems. Now, can we agree that between all of this stuff, which, by the way, was in fact libel, this is why I tell you the truth. When you say that the machine swapped the vote, you saw it on TV, and when you say the head of the company planned it, that is in fact defamation and libel. Classic boom, right? But did it hurt Dominion? Did it hurt a company that does a couple $100 million a year? Did it hurt that company to get paid $1 billion in settlements? Did it actually hurt the private enterprise to get massive cash settlements? Well, the answer is no. So now, if you're an investor, and all I'm doing is I'm giving you a critical thinking path. I'm not going to tell you what to think. You decide on your own. Okay. So now you're in the election business. You want to be in the election business. Now, the only thing really of value in the election business technically is two things. What are the two things? We're talking, if you're analyzing buying an election company, you want to buy an election company. What are the two things if the name's been killed? What are the, and by the way, you don't do a brand name sell. You don't go, well, I'm going to this precinct because it uses Dominion. This one uses Pillow Salesman Machine. No, I want to go over to Dominion. Dominion's the brand name. Do you have a say? Yeah. So you understand the name of the company means nothing, adds no value. Now, the next part of it is there are two things of value. So putting my investor hat on, my CEO hat on, the two things that are of value are existing contracts, right? Existing contracts and the physical equipment actually deployed. And one thing binds that together. You have been pre-approved by the Election Assistance Commission. That's it. Those are the only assets. Okay. So you buy a company. It's going to come with the existing systems, hardware and software. It's going to come with existing contracts that are deployed in the field. And then it's already going to be pre-approved by the Election Assistance Commission. Now, let me ask you a question. Did anything change in the process in that move? Did anything in that process change? Just put it in chat. It's very simple. Did anything in that process change? Anything that changes how anything is operated? No. You know it. I know it. Okay. Can the machines that have already been contracted for, these are 10-year contracts from what I understand, can the machines and the systems that are already approved software-wise that says, this is the software we run, this is how we do it, this is what got approved by the EAC, this is what approved by the state. Did any functionality along those lines, change? Yes or no? Of course not. Nothing changed. Now, I want you to understand why nothing changed. Because if you change the software and if you change the hardware, if you actually change it, you have to go back through the approval process. Oops. So in this move, and I'm just going it layer by layer, just layer by layer. Were the playing cards just shuffled, or did it actually change anything? From what you have linear thinking otherwise, because remember, you can't change the software in the middle of a contract. It's approved for that software. You can't change the contract that has been contracted, because then if you change the contract been contracted, you got to go through all the contracting process again. You got to go through all the vetting process again. You've got to go through all of the EAC build again. So you inherently understand what happened is nothing changed and it was just shuffled a bit. Now, let's just assess it from a marketing standpoint. Is that okay? Nothing changed. What had the name of Dominion, what you came to believe had dominion over you and controlled everything, became the opposite of dominion, and it became liberty. You got liberty. That's what you want, your freedom, and you want to live with your liberties. So a name change took us from being dominated over to being libertied over. Well, liberty's better. Yes, I want liberty. I wrote dominion. Right? Aside from that, not much changed. Now, if we were looking at a company, you look at their assets, on hand. So if I was going to buy the company, you look at how many pieces of equipment are in the field, what are the terms of those equipment? Almost all of them are almost immediately outdated. What are your obligations to service them or update them? How many employees in the company? How much cash on hand? How much value in contracts? That's how you assess the value of a company. So let me ask you a question. If I was to throw that in, if I actually took, well, they're the largest provider and they've got, we'll just say, $500,000 in contract. You can have $1 billion contract and only make $10,000 profit. It's just a number. You have $1 billion, right? But let's just say they had $500 million in contracts, just hypothetically. But we also know they got $1 billion cash on hand. Why? Because we know they got paid that. So the next question I have to ask you is, did a Republican walk in and say how companies are normally bought? Here's how they're bought. It's what's called multiples. They look at contracts on hand, liabilities, what it costs you to run it, what space you're in, and they determine what's the value for your company. And they then pay basically on that, how somebody gets bought, you get paid on a multiple. We're going to buy you very low multiple, but 2. In the tech business, a multiple can be 50. But let's just say it's 2. So if you valued this company at, and it had in actual assets, $1.5 billion worth of assets, contracts, those contracts are for 10 years, 80% of them have been renewed. They're only in the first year. That, you understand, that's just going to keep on renewing. Let me ask you a question. Do you think a Republican anything walked in and gave Dominion $1.5 billion for that company, or gave Dominion $3 billion, a 2-time multiple for that company? Do you believe that a singular company, right, that's known for about $53 million in sales, I'll get into that, right? Do you think they walked in to Dominion and plopped down $1 billion, $1.5 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion? Do you think somebody walked into a company as severely damaged as Dominion? Let's just call it like it is. They were decimated. Do you think somebody walked in and plopped that down? Answer in chat. If you actually think somebody walked in and plopped that down. Because it's kind of like, if you were going to sell a $100 million lush finished out jet that has a street value of $100 million, but then you find out it was Epstein's jet and it was the Lolita Express where everybody spilled all over the plane, it's not going to bring $100 million or anywhere close to it. Nobody wants anything to do with it. You follow what I'm saying? It's going to come at a serious discount. So the first thing you have to ask in normal business acumen in a damaged company, that it's got to come at a serious discount, because you're buying something that has, in the media eyes and the public eyes or whatever, has been severely hobbled and destroyed. So here comes the next question. If they had $1 billion cash windfall, because again, we're taking into account $1 billion+ in the bank, $500 million in contracts. Are you going to take a discount on your company just to get it sold? Just a question. I can't see how anybody logically is going to buy it. But are you going to take a discount just so you can unload it? You got $1 billion in the bank in the company's name. It's the company's money. And you got all these contracts out there. Are you going to take a discount just to unload it? Are you going to sell it for $100 million, $500 million just to walk away when you got $1 billion+ cash in the bank? Well, the answer is in the business realm, no. Which means it's possibly going to be some sort of blended buy. Now, here's how it works. You might buy the company saying, okay, guys, look, you take all your cash. We don't want it. Well, then Dominion, everybody made out great. What's left over is contracts and equipment in the field. Okay. Now, maybe there was some sort of value there, but again, it comes hobbled with it's the existing systems, it's the existing software, Dominion, Democracy Suite, whatever, it's there. You're not going to change those things right away. It's just not how it works. The question is, on that, would Dominion take a skinning? And the answer for that is logically yes, because now they have an albatross. They got the money out. And this is all hypothetical. They got the money out, and now they've kind of liquidated the company. So let's state on that. Did Dominion get ruined in this process? Well, the answer, in my opinion, is no, because they could have possibly walked away with an excess of $1 billion. And then they took the albatross and they let it go over here. And somebody's taking that albatross and they rename it. Now, why do I tell you this? Okay. So we're going to go back in history. We're going to go back 60 years. 60 years. We're going to take a 60-year snapshot to be fair to everybody when it comes to, okay, our voting systems and our voting machines. Now, I'm only making the thing. Would anybody in the world pay Dominion what it's worth if it didn't have the debacle? And all I'm saying is business acumen tells me they're going to take the cash out and all the executives walk away and they're going to unload the company because it's really future forward money. Maybe it has some value, but look, they walked away with their cash, so they're fine. Now, the very first time that this happened, it happened in the 1960s. That's why I'm going back in time. So during the I'm going to give you the time periods between the 1960s and the 1980s. We used to have a voting company that's called Shoup, S-H-O-U-P. These are part of the downloads I provided for you. Now, Shoup, the AVM, which was called Advanced Voting Solutions. If you want to read about these things, you can read a great book written by a liberal, by a Democrat, called Black Box Voting. So, and it covers a lot of it. Anyway, so between the 1960s and the 1980s, there was a really big controversy, okay, about Shoup voting, which was the lever voting, lever machines. You know, you punch card, gink, gink, right? Now, it got in trouble. And so what Shoup did, when there were questions, Shoup rebranded and became Advanced Voting Systems. So first off, we go back 60 years, we got an interesting trend. Something happened, gets associated with a name, they change their name to try to come out as something else, okay? Now, in the changing of that name, that company, Advanced Voting Systems, actually folded up. But some of the assets, some of the contracts and stuff were bought by a company called Votomatic. 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 Act now and you'll get the Ron Popeil slicer. Anyway, it was called Votomatic. That was the punch card systems where it punched, dink, 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 dink. Now, that was derived off the basis of the IBM data cards. Well, it got into a controversy too. By the way, this is in the 60s and 80s. Don't forget, in the 2000s, this came into play, this particular stuff. You know it as the hanging chads issue. So it didn't go away. But the system, the storyline of the system is that, well, that stopped in the 80s because it gets associated to the name, not the features, not the device, not whatever. See, even though SHOOP and advanced voting systems went away by 1980 in the 80s, that hanging chad debacle happened in 2000. So it survived another 20 years. How did it do that? So I tell you this because if I was just to take 1960 through 1980 and look at what we had in the United States, etc., when a lot of stuff was manual, and when the controversies came in regarding machines, when it truly was a voting machine, the pull-o-matic, the jack-o-matic, the screw-o-matic, those were literal machines. They got in trouble. But even though they got in trouble and got rebranded and then disappeared, they were still in play 20 years later because we had to deal with it then. Well, another consolidation happened in the 1990s. Now, this is basically what the industry, if you really understand your history, the industry calls the consolidation wars. There was a really big roll-up that you had all these little players that were approved at all different places, and somebody gets, you know what, we need to turn this into maybe one thing. And so what we had back then was called CES, Computer Election Systems. Computer Election Systems eventually merged and it became BRC, Business Records Corp. Right? They had trouble. So Computer Election Systems had trouble. Then they basically merged into Business Records Corp. They had trouble. Then ultimately Business Record Corp was acquired by American Information Systems. That's AIS. It acquired the entire election division of Business Records Corp. Okay? So this is in the 90s. Now, what this is mergers and acquisitions, rebranding. But did the systems and machines go away? Well, the answer is no. It didn't go away. So basically what happened, the SHOOP AVM, right, which became Vote-Matic, with all these elective roles, became Computer Election Systems, Business Records Corp, which became American Information Systems, AIS, when they acquired it in 77. Then it became something new. Again, because it was always having problems. There was always questions. What did it become? Well, you know it today as ES&S. Now, back then, there was a problem. With all that consolidation going on, the consolidation wave, our Department of Justice at the time says, you got a little too much power. All of these things are kind of consolidated. And we're worried about it via antitrust laws, which we may be back to today, but we'll get to that. And so all of that issue that there was maybe too much power, the Department of Justice, through the Antitrust Act or action, basically required that this new system, American Information Systems, divest what was called UpTech. That's kind of how it was packaged and positioned. Well, if you're not going to have so much control, you have to divest of UpTech. You got to get rid of that line. Well, they did. And that line became what you know as Sequoia. Okay. Now, Sequoia introduces the future to election. Now, the future to election is we're going to have great optical scanners and we're going to have DREs, direct recording equipment, which means the person doesn't mark the ballot. You mark the screen. Because, see, people are too stupid to fill out ovals, and it's too hard to read, and we don't want squiggly wigglies. We want it perfect within line, so we want the machine to be able to print in the oval, and that's what makes a vote. Well, Sequoia boomed, and counties started moving to direct recording equipment, DREs, okay? So they dominated the market. So through the early 2000s, okay, a couple of things happened. So we still had these legacy systems, which were the hanging chad. And all of this was now under a company that had picked up this stuff called Diebold. Do you remember Diebold? I think they were probably cash registers, point of sale systems, etc. Diebold, okay? And so what happened is a new company was formed called Global Election Systems. Now, let me ask you a question. When it comes to elections, do you want anything global? Hell no. Okay. So what happened here is a new player in the market emerged called Global Election Systems. Now, on the Global Election Systems, because there were some issues with Diebold, everybody's saying Diebold bad, Diebold issues with machines. They acquired Diebold in 2002. This is after the hanging Chad issue. Everybody's screaming Chads and this and this and this and this, which, by the way, was the very first kinematic artifact detection, because it's looking at the state of the paper and the punch and seeing what state it's in, and did a human do it, was an accident. But most people don't know their history, so you don't know. Looking at it kinematically has been around for a long time. Anyway, so Diebold got sold to Global Election Systems, and it got renamed DESI, Diebold Election Systems, Inc. Okay? Diebold Election Systems, Inc. And that became the predominant player. However, there was a little bit of a mud mark on this sale, because the key executives running the elections, global election system, the key executives in the companies had a problem. You can read this in about black box voting. I'd highly recommend it. And I probably posted it on my stuff somewhere at one time. It's out of print. The executives, the key leaders, the key drivers, the key executives had prior convictions for embezzlement and fraud. Well, when some of those convictions got known, that, well, holy shit, these guys have been, these guys that founded this have been convicted of embezzlement and fraud and all this other stuff, right? And so what happened is the industry, again, had to go through a rebranding. I've told you about this even in podcasts and stuff. I warned you many months before it actually happened. You saw it. They're all going to rebrand, which they did. Now, what happened is they rebranded again, and that became Premier Election Systems. That happened in 2007. Why? Because everybody was talking about security issues. Now, what you should know is it just keeps rolling. Same issues. It only solves it with a new rebrand. And so that was in 2007. Now, what happened is where Premier got in trouble, Princeton University, I think, did a study in 2006, and California did a top-to-bottom review in 2007, and they basically found out these things really have issues. These aren't secure. Let me remind you the dates. 2006, 19 years ago. Is that 19 years ago? No, excuse me. That's 2006. Wait, 10. Yeah. What is that? Anyway, 2006, 2007. They're not secure. There's problems. Well, what did they do? Well, they caused a shakeup in the companies, but they found out a little bit more. Besides these bad executives, the actual Diebold chair that was involved in all of this was raising political money for candidates. So how can you run an election and have a definitive choice of a candidate that you're pushing? So it caused a huge, and you're right, Desi has some splaining to do. basically what happened is it caused a huge controversy. And so the way they solved that is you can't be an election official and you can't have political activity. Okay. So then it all comes to bubble a service again, and now in the true mid 2000s, and it came to bubble in the mid 2000s as what was called the Smartmatic Sequoia entanglement. What? The smart, and yeah, don't worry, because they're going to introduce Patriot voting systems soon. Anyway, the Smartmatic Sequoia issue had happened. Now, what happened in 2005? Smartmatic acquires Sequoia. Remember, I go up into the 90s where we first get Sequoia relating to this elections. Now we're getting into the mid 2000s, and Smartmatic acquires Sequoia. And what happened is there was a review. And the review is, wait a minute, you've got foreign owner investors in this. And so there was a CFI-SUS or CFI-US review. And basically, they kind of had to divest. You got foreign owners in it. So this happens over a period of a few years. So you get to the next phase in this stuff, and that's 2009 to 2019. This is called the Premier Sale, the Antitrust, and the Dominion Entry. Okay, so this is what happens when we get into this. So 2009, 2010, there's the Premier Sale, there's the Antitrust, and there's the Dominion Entry. So Diebold Premier, which sold to ES&S in 2009, which the Department of Justice forced divestiture in 2010. So this company comes up called Dominion Voting Systems, and it acquires all of the assets of Premier, and all of a sudden it goes from nothing in a name, and it's a top tier 3 vendor. Now, you understand that was a purchase and a name change. Boom, you're in the top 3. Okay. So in the 2010s, now we got an issue. This is where what happened is the private equity markets, meaning big investors, Blackstone, all those guys, private equity markets, they enter the election machine business. Now, I want to tell you something here that's always been a disconnect for me. Elections are based on being secret information and stuff. And these election companies are all private, and they don't release their financial information. Let me go back. We're doing all this based on the premise that our elections are private, our elections are secret, whatever the case may be, and all our elections have to be maintained that way, right? And we're working on that. This all has to be private. People aren't supposed to see it, right? Nobody's supposed to know what's happening. Nobody's supposed to have inside data. So the very first thing that came to my mind as I'm doing this historical research, I'm going, well, what I know about private equity markets, they're buying a revenue stream. They want, remember, private equity is handling retirements, handling all this stuff. They want to guarantee there is a return on investment. Well, these voting systems jockey back and forth. So my first question is, why would a private equity market get into that? Maybe to have inside information, but then when you understand in a private equity market, which you see a lot of this stuff going on with BlackRock today, you can have a hell of a lot of influence on lawmakers. You could probably influence them. You need to use these machines. Why? Because you have an investment in it. I think that was all very dubious to begin with. But what happened is that's when Hart InterCivic, which goes neck and neck with Dominion, took from HIG Capital an investment in 2011. So now you got the private equity coming in. So remember when I told you that the Shoup people got in trouble in the 1960s through the 80s, and that advanced voting systems actually folded? I gave you the dates. So it was 1960 to 1980. Shoup became AVM, Advanced Voting Solutions, and then it became all that other stuff. Well, Advanced Voting Systems, which was supposedly folded up in the 80s, actually only went down in 2010. Wait a minute. History shows us that Advanced Voting Solutions, the ex-Shoup company, folded in the 1980s. But here we're in 2010, 30 years later. We'll just call it 20, benefit of the doubt. It only really folds in 2010 or 11? Yeah. And so what happens is this Shoup company, pulling lever machine, punching cards, which popped back up in the 2020 election, Bush versus Gore. Well, what happened is in 2010, they got caught up again, supposedly gone. But you know what they got caught up again with? They got caught up because Virginia decertified their advanced voting systems WinVote. That's what the software was called. You didn't realize it was the same company because it called WinVote. We want you to win the vote. WinVote, right? Well, what happened is what finally caused the death knell in 2010. Now, this is how it comes to your collective memory. I'm going to remind you, but you're going to understand how this comes to your collective memory. The reason AVS went down is because they discovered they had hard-coded Wi-Fi in the machines with the password setting being ABCDE. Now, that was in 2010. Where have you heard this stuff before? See, that's where it came up. All these machines aren't supposed to have Wi-Fi, be connected to the internet. That's where the myths started being. But in 2010, it was still there. It was there, period. It was hard-coded into it. But see, enough people back then were still thinking modems, which is why to this day you can see them testify before Congress. We don't make machines with modems connecting to the internet. Yeah, no shit. Nobody makes modems anymore. But their controversy was the actual password, right? The actual password was ABCDE. Now, they got better because they did it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 later, but we'll get to that in a moment. And so what happened in all of this stuff doing direct DREs, right? You know, direct optical readers where you punch the screens and it prints the ballot for you. Digital recording. The states got rid of that, and all the states in 2010 shift back to basically paper-based optical scanning systems. So now optical scanning systems become the standard, right? Not a person's going to sit there and look at the ballot. A machine's not going to mark it, but we're not a person's going to sit there and look at it. I mean, and count it like it used to be. We're just going to move to optical scanning. That's what we're going to do, optical scanning. Which is basically when we all moved from actually what had always been was a physical hand count. Okay, was a physical hand count. And so then in the 2020s, what's going on, you know, started with what happened in 2020, et cetera. All the little guys basically folded and consolidated into three major players, ES&S, Dominion, and Hart. It's at that time, and only at that time, that the legacy machines were phased out. Only at that time. The legacy machines were phased out. But these companies had to deal with what's called the long tail of contracts, because the contracts are still in space. Okay? Now, I've given you a collective history of everything we've gone through with the machines and what it actually entailed. And what you see is it's the same freaking assets to run the elections, always under a different name. And that's it. Now, this is why I'm doing this program, because I'm assessing. Are we experiencing another shuffling of the deck? Let's analyze the voting cards. No ink becomes liberty voting and all this other stuff. What is it really? So I'm just asking the hard questions. That's it. I just want you to think for yourself. What are the hard questions? Now, in that convoluted history I gave you, and remember I told you about executives that had been convicted, or executives that were questionable, or executives that had embezzlement or whatever. Well, all of these guys just moved around. If we were to look at founders from a founding standpoint, it was Bob Urosevich. I think that's how you say Sevich. Urosevich. Bob Urosevich. He's the one that co-founded American Information Systems, and he went on to co-found ES&S. He founded ES&S. All of those moved around. He later became the president of GES, Global Election Services. So you see, the company stayed around. He founded one, then he moved over here and founded one called Doble. That was in 2000. And then he moved over to Diebold in 2002. Bing, 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 bing. Oh, by the way, his brother Todd went with him and had senior roles at ES&S. There were security flaw issues in Diebold, Sequoia, Hart, ES&S. There were antitrust suits against Premier and its sell to ES&S. There was ownership scrutiny in both Smartmatic and Sequoia, and there were governance optics in Diebold. But what changed? Nothing. Nothing. Not a thing. Zero. Nothing changed. So now we're going to get into the nitty gritty, and we're going to dive into, okay, well, what is this no ink and what is liberty voting? I'm going to jump over to locals. You'll find it at JovanHuttonPulitzer.locals.com. JovanHuttonPulitzer.locals.com. If you're on Rumble right now, you'll see a red oval. You can click that oval and you can jump over. Okay, you can jump over. And I'm going now to give you the history of no ink, all its iterations, and the actual person who is the former Republican election official. Now, here's one thing I want to tell you. I personally believe we're in trouble come the midterms, and I think it's pretty obvious. Here's why it's obvious. Obama, which was supposed to be the rock star of rock stars, got 69 million votes in his first term. He got 65 million votes in his second term. Hillary, which was also to be a rock star running against Trump, got 65 million votes, right? I just want you to think about that for a minute. And then all of a sudden, we get this big FU of fingers. Am I right or am I wrong? We get this huge FU of fingers with Biden with 81 million votes. 81 million votes that we're supposed to believe that Joe Biden got. Now, I don't know anyone who truly believes that. Okay, who truly believes that. And then, of course, we had Kamala run against Donald J. Trump, and Kamala got 68 million votes. Okay? Now, there's been something nefarious going on under the hood, and that is if you kept watching and you kept looking at the election numbers, somehow Kamala, since the close of the election, we're getting close to a year ago, she's gone up to almost 75 million votes. Now, you see it closes that gap on Biden. It closes the gap. And so what that does is all those BS votes I kept on calling out and all the illegals coming in, which can vote. Now we got about 30 some odd million bad ones on the voter rolls. Now what they're doing is by saying they voted for Kamala, they're basically taking it from one general election. They voted here. They weren't any good. Now they're able to say, well, no, they voted in 2 general elections, so they must be good. See, that's how they're doing the scoot up. And so I've always told you it's people, paper, and programs. Now, and for anybody to be able to use the programs of voting, for anybody able to get the piece of paper called the ballot for voting, where do they have to originate? Well, they have to originate first at the very start on the voter rolls. Stay with me before I jump. They have to get on the voter rolls first. And so that's what they did. They dropped them in voter rolls so they could vote there, and they're scooching them up, trying to make them legit. They're saying it's the machines, but it kept everybody away from the voter rolls. Now, you've seen almost everybody that it's the machines swap the vote. I saw it on TV. They're now playing, they're hoping you forget that. And they're now saying, well, it's the mail-in ballots, and we've always championed this. But when we're all fighting this battle, and this is just truth, you got to be able to handle the truth to understand where this heads, folks. And so the number one champion of the machines, he put his team crisscrossing America. And here's what his lead, what everybody in Cause of America is associated with. And this is a time when I'm having direct discussions, planning, and work with President Trump to basically get down to the voter rolls and get it cleaned. In response to that, they put out a team on the road to give this advice.
So you have a centralized statewide voter roll that's on networked machines, servers. It has a public-facing internet interface. That's it. That's all I need to know that it's blown. That's a centralized statewide voter roll that was mandated by Help America Vote Act. They have these all over the country. And it's not just that you have a public-facing internet interface to it, but multiple organizations have what's called an API, or an application programming interface. In other words, a machine-to-machine interface into that voter roll. And I'm telling you this because when people say, well, we have to clean up the voter rolls, it's true that they're not following the law. It's true that they're not in good faith maintaining them in accordance with Title 52 that requires that the voter rolls be both secure and accurate. That's a requirement imposed on the secretaries of state who've received the Help America Voting Act and CARES Act funding to maintain those voting systems. What nobody's going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you, is you cannot clean those rolls. You're sweeping a dirt floor.
Okay. So when we already know it's the rolls, and here we are 2 years later, and here's what they've done. They've moved it up. We're fighting hard to go back to the impetus to get it fixed. I want to remind you one other little historic thing, and there's a lot of people that volunteer for Cause of America, but there's your leader, funded by Mike Lindell. I want to go back to the very beginning when some of you might have been exposed to me for the very first time. I am testifying for the Senate in Georgia on the status of elections and what's happening. And when you go back to see me, there was an extremely viral video. I mean, it went everywhere, right? And the systems tried real hard to suppress it. And that's where a lot of you got to know me, because I'm saying, wait a minute, if the 2020 election was basically a mail-in election, they'll have fixed folds. And we can at least see if it was an official ballot or not by just the kinematic detection of that fixed fold. It's where a lot of you got exposed to me. During that same testimony, it just so happened that researchers and investigators in the field, while we're tracking down stuff, seeing thermometers communicating, seeing televisions communicating or whatever, my lead that was doing that actually was able to see the system being the poll books. Here's how they're checking in voters. Here's how they're doing this. It was all like out in the open. And you remember me saying, hey, because it was actually happening right outside the courthouse or whatever, at the courthouse location from where we were having this Senate meeting. And I'm telling them, man, they just left the door open. Wasn't hacking at all. It's just left the door open, right? And we can see everything transacted, and we know these things are hooked together, and you can eventually work your way into the system. Well, you saw Ratzenberg attack me, and you saw that Gabriel Sterling came on, no, it's not true, and it's not this, not this. Well, I want to remind you of one thing you may have forgot. What we were looking at, and the entry was through the No Ink poll pad. That was the gateway, the No Ink poll pad. And we can see it all transacting. And so it is No Ink that has now bought Dominion, that has now redone themselves as Liberty Voting. But what you have to understand is we even showed the information. All of these poll pads are wired into a wide area mesh network. There were 6,996 of them deployed, rough terms, and they all kind of talk together and they kind of see everything. And it's an initial gateway into the system. And they put out all kinds of warning. Make sure on this, you turn off the toggle. Make sure you turn off the toggle. Make sure so nobody can see it. Well, that was No Ink. It's how you got to know me. It's how you got to say, something's going on because you can see a lot of these things. And No Ink is the provider of that, the largest provider of that. And this is what has now become Liberty Voting. Now, I'm only giving it from my both personal and professional opinion, what we found. The bottom line is, even as I started the program, it always comes down to the paper. Paper is where you get to nail bad guys doing bad things, but you got to have the paper. This is why the system fought the Arizona audit so hard. You'll get a link here in a few minutes. Join me over at Locals where we go into the next phase.
Our courts are based on clear and convincing evidence. Want convictions? Want justice? For what happened in the 2020 election? Then we need your help. Not fixing 2020 will damn our nation forever. The decision you make in the next few moments could decide whether we ever get our elections fixed or not. Here's why. Trump campaign and allies file 64 different lawsuits. They all went down in flames. 100% of these cases were presented on "It's the machines," or "The machines changed the votes," or "The voting company executive said he would make sure Donald J. Trump would not win." They all went down in flames. Why? You can't bring theories to court as evidence. No supposed Zoom call or six-degree polynomial math theory or census data is or ever will be proof of fraud. You can't bring theories to court as evidence. Here's why. In both civil and criminal law, the side making a claim carries the burden of proof, and prosecutors must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Without physical or otherwise verifiable evidence, a case cannot meet this high threshold. Physical evidence is the key. The question is, did anyone get relevant, reliable, provable, testable, and duplicatable evidence of what really happened in the 2020 general election? And the answer is yes, absolutely. The full forensic audit of Maricopa County, Arizona is the only evidence-gathering work which gathered relevant, reliable, provable, testable, and duplicatable evidence of what really happened in the 2020 general election. Evidence so damning that the system, the deep state, and those who pull the strings of this country have fought to keep it hidden and have hoped to have it be forgotten to time. Almost $3 million invested in time, funds, and efforts to unlock that which the system wanted hidden. But now, that evidence is in danger of being lost forever. So if you want what happened in the 2020 election fixed, then we need your help. Please donate to protect and secure this historic evidence. With the 2026 midterms coming up, the system is going to try to lame duck President Trump and then most likely introduce new impeachment proceedings. This is the evidence which will help win the war which is surely to come. We need to keep Maricopa County full forensic investigation and archive secure and ongoing. So if you want what happened in the 2020 election fixed, then we need your help. Please donate to protect and secure this historic evidence. We need your help securing the full forensic audit archives. Don't allow the only testable, objective, and reliable 2020 election evidence fall into obscurity. Millions were spent on getting it documented and tested. This is historic evidence. Not fixing 2020 will damn our nation forever. The historic Maricopa County full forensic audit effort processed 20,895,610 digital and forensic images of varying formats, resulted in 208 million individual evidence-proof files. The system processed over 58 billion forensic measurements, resulting in over 2 trillion individual base computations. No hopium, no hype, just hardcore forensic evidence. Please make sure the Maricopa County full forensic audit archives survive. Donate now. So if you want what happened in the 2020 election fixed, then please donate to protect and secure this historic evidence. We can't do it without you. We need you. America needs you. Our future needs you. Please donate now. Not fixing 2020 will damn our nation forever. Please donate now.
This crazy world is telling you your sons can be daughters and your daughters can be your sons. When will the madness stop? Never. So you have to decide, will you comply or defy? They tell us all, you will own nothing, eat bugs, and be happy. Is this why America's largest food processing plants and food supply plants keep burning down? Do you really think this is a coincidence? Of course not. The system is telling us right to our faces what they have planned for us. You have a choice. Comply or simply defy their plan for us all. Defy the system's plan and execute your own plan. Abundant, safe, secure natural food supply. Introducing the Food Forest Bible. This bestseller by JovanHuttonPulitzer is the single most complete, executable, easy-to-follow plan for sustainable, self-managing food production for self-sufficiency and food security. For the first time ever, a coffee table, heirloom quality full color book which unlocks the ancient secrets of creating a food forest. Imagine planting in a way which requires no digging, no pesticides, and creates massive ancient food abundance. No fooling. Food forests are the ancient secret to planning and planting once. And have your own Garden of Eden, which will feed your families for decade after decade. Buck the system. Buck the New World Order and order your very own copy of JovanHuttonPulitzer's Food Forest Bible. Learn how to create a sustainable, self-managing, natural food production for self-sufficiency and food security for your family. Side yard, small yard, backyard, backlot, or even lots of acres, the Food Forest Bible works for everyone. Order on Amazon, hardcover, softcover, or ebook. Don't comply. Expertly defy the system.